Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with Paraguay's President Santiago Pena in New Delhi, aimed at strengthening bilateral ties and economic relations. Israel releases drone footage accusing Hamas of attacking an aid delivery center in southern Gaza's Rafah, which killed over 30 people and injured over 170 others. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the UK military is moving to war-fighting readiness as he unveils the government's defence spending plans. Nationalist historian Karol Nawrocki wins Poland's presidential election in a major blow for the country's pro-EU government. And deadly floods kill at least 200 people in the Nigerian town of Mokwa. As per officials, another 500 people still remain missing in the town in the central Niger state. Hello and welcome. Our first story, let's focus on the rising tensions in Europe as Ukraine's latest massive drone strike on Russia fuels fears of retaliation from Moscow. A stark warning has come from one of NATO's top military leaders, and this has raised concerns across the Western alliance. Now, Germany's Chief of Defense, General Carsten Breuer, has warned that NATO members must brace themselves for a possible Russian attack. He said this attack could come within the next 4 years. Speaking to the media on the sidelines of the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore, General Breuer has expressed his concerns over Russia's military buildup. He revealed that Moscow is reportedly producing hundreds of tanks every year, and a significant portion of these could be used to attack NATO's Baltic states by the year 2029 or even earlier. Now, General Breuer has singled out the so-called Suwalki Gap as one of the most vulnerable areas. It is an area that borders Lithuania, Poland, Russia, and Belarus. Now, General Breuer has stressed the unprecedented nature of the threat that he perceives from Russia. He stated that Russia is producing an estimated 1,500 main battle tanks every year. Moscow also reportedly produced millions of artillery rounds in 2024. General Breuer has highlighted that not all of these tanks and artillery are being deployed in Ukraine, but are also being used to bolster Russia's weapons stockpile and new military structures facing the West. An attack on a NATO state could also potentially trigger a larger war between Russia and the US, which is a key member of NATO. Despite the recent expressions of differing opinions on the Ukraine war by Hungary and Slovakia, who have maintained a pro-Russian stance, General Breuer has insisted that the alliance remains unified over the war in Ukraine. Now, these warnings just weeks ahead of a key NATO summit in The Hague, where the defense budgets are expected to be discussed. General Breuer's remarks underscore a significant shift in Germany's stance on defense and Russia. Like many Western nations, Berlin too has scaled down its investments in its military over many years. But now there has been a growing recognition of the need to reverse this. In his remarks, General Breuer has urged that NATO members build up their militaries again. Now, while there is a growing consensus on the need to ramp up military readiness, questions remain about the speed and scale at which Europe's defense industry can match Russia's current production levels. Furthermore, Washington has been shifting its focus toward the Indo-Pacific. This raises questions about its long-term defense commitments in Europe. Meanwhile, the war between Russia and Ukraine shows no sign of stopping or slowing. Now, in the latest, Russia has said that it intercepted over 160 Ukrainian drones hours before the second round of direct talks in Turkey. Ukraine also launched a large-scale drone attack targeting Russian air bases on Sunday. As General Burr is warning NATO of an impending danger, now it remains to be seen how will the Western alliance prepare itself to face a possible Russian attack in the future. And shifting our focus now to the growing tensions in the Indo-Pacific, where China's accelerating military buildup is raising serious concerns. Australia has formally flagged Beijing's expanding military presence in the Indo-Pacific and has also urged China to adopt greater transparency in its strategic intentions. Now, Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles has warned that China's military expansion represents the largest conventional build-up by any nation since the end of the Second World War. Highlighting Beijing's lack of strategic clarity, Marles criticized the opaque nature of China's defense developments. And the Australian leader stressed that such rapid militarization has occurred without the reassurance typically expected among regional neighbors. While he stopped short of directly labeling China as an adversary, Marles made it clear that Australia is preparing to withstand coercion from any potential threat.
I mean, this is the biggest conventional military build-up that we've seen since the end of the Second World War, and that's been playing out over a significant period now. It's really that which is what shapes our decision-making and is shaping our response, and why we are much more focused now in terms of our strategic intent, and to make sure that we are in a position to defend our nation, to make sure that we're in a position to resist coercion from any potential adversary.
When asked about a highly scrutinized Chinese military exercise near the Australia in February, the Australian leader called it disruptive. Now, earlier this year, in February, 3 Chinese warships reached just 150 nautical miles east of Sydney, the furthest China's Navy had ever been on Australia's eastern coast. Now, those high-intensity drills included deployment of advanced warships, reportedly capable of carrying nuclear-capable cruise missiles, a move that significantly elevated security concerns in the Indo-Pacific. In that same month, Australia accused a Chinese jet of releasing flares just 30 meters from an Australian aircraft over the South China Sea, a dangerous maneuver that drew swift condemnation from Canberra. In recent years, Australia's defence strategy has relied in part on US military presence in the region. However, with shifting security dynamics under the renewed presidency of Donald Trump, Canberra is taking greater responsibility for its own defence posture. As Beijing's assertiveness continues to unsettle the Indo-Pacific, Australia's message is clear. It will not be caught unprepared. With tensions simmering across contested waters and strategic lines redrawn, the region is bracing for an era defined not just by diplomacy, but by deterrence. And moving on, let's turn our attention to Nepal's worsening domestic crisis as pro-monarchy protests continue to grip Nepal's capital of Kathmandu. The country's former Deputy Prime Minister Kamal Thapa and several others were arrested on Sunday after attempting to breach a restricted zone during a pro-monarchy demonstration in the capital. The royalists have been demanding the reinstatement of a monarchy and the establishment of Nepal as a Hindu state. Now, Nepal abolished its centuries-old monarchy in the year 2008, following bloody street protests that led to the ouster of the then-king Gyanendra Shah.
In the past, I was also wrong. I, too, went out onto the streets to dethrone the king. But back then, I was not thinking logically. My mind was blocked. Now I have realized that the king is far better than the Republican leaders.
We made a mistake in the past and we're on the wrong path. Now it's high time to bring the king back, save the nation, and lead the country towards good governance.
Sunday marked the fourth day of the indefinite agitation, which began on the 29th of May. The demonstration was led by the president of the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, or the RPP, Rajendra Prasad Lingden, who was a staunch supporter of the monarchy. And the protesters attempted to break through security cordons and march toward the Prime Minister's official residence. The protesters also clashed with the police. Now, Kathmandu Valley Police spokesperson confirmed that the former Deputy Prime Minister and others were detained for violating the restricted area surrounding a palace museum. Later, the RPP leader and MP Deepak Bahadur Singh were taken into custody at the district police precincts, where he went to meet with Thapa, who was under detention. Both of them were released a few hours later. Now, the protesters, carrying photographs of the former king, Gyanendra Shah, chanted slogans against the current Republican system and the government led by Prime Minister KP Sharma Ali. Now, Nepal's police and paramilitary forces were deployed in additional numbers across the capital on Sunday. Security was heightened after Saturday's march that brought protesters close to the Prime Minister's residence. Now, pro-monarchy parties in Nepal say that the latest arrests assert that these actions would only galvanize more support for their movement. In the wake of the recent pro-monarchy protests, the Nepali government has announced restrictions on protests in most parts of Kathmandu. Sit-ins, hunger strikes, protests, and public gatherings and demonstrations are prohibited within the capital, except for at a few places. The restriction has gone into effect today and will stay in place for the next 2 months. This latest escalation raises serious questions about the stability of the current political climate in Nepal. Now, we will continue to follow this developing story and provide updates as they become available. And in our final story, we turn to the Philippines, where a nation about 80% of the population identifies as Catholic. Vice President Sara Duterte has linked her upcoming impeachment trial in the Filipino Senate to a pivotal event in the Holy Bible, the Crucifixion. Clarifying her controversial bloodbath remarks, Sara Duterte described the trial as her political crucifixion and called it a targeted attack by her opponents. Duterte said, and I quote, "The scheduled impeachment trial is political persecution," adding that if it's persecution, it's a crucifixion. And when there's a crucifixion, there's blood. So it's a bloodbath, unquote. When asked if she expects the impeachment to proceed, Duterte said that she's left it to her legal team, and she admits she doesn't know if the trial will move forward, but says that she is ready for whatever comes next. According to the president of the Philippine Senate, the articles of impeachment would be presented against Sara Duterte on the 11th of June. An impeachment court will convene on the same day, and Vice President Duterte will have 10 days to respond to the Senate-convened impeachment court summons. The trial will continue until the 30th of June, and if the proceedings do not conclude by that date, the court's proceedings may resume when the Congress recommences in July. Now, the continued rift between the Marcos and the Duterte families, once touted as a powerful UniTeam in 2022 presidential elections, has unraveled in recent months. Vice President Sara Duterte resigned as the Education Secretary in the Marcos government in June of 2024. In November, Sara Duterte publicly declared that her relationship with President Marcos had reached a point of no return, accusing his camp of harassment and conspiring to remove her from office. In February of this year, Duterte was impeached by the House of Representatives on several charges, including graft. The ties further plummeted in March of this year when the Marcos administration cooperated with Interpol to facilitate the arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte. The political ties between President Marcos and Vice President Duterte will now be put to the test in the Senate impeachment trial, a battle the Duterte camp insists they will survive. This impeachment trial is more than just a legal showdown. It is a high-stakes political battle, further exposing the fractures in what was once a united front. In a nation deeply rooted in faith and symbolism, Duterte's crucifixion analogy cannot be ruled out as empty rhetoric. As the trial looms, the Philippines watches, waiting to see if this political saga will bleed out quietly or erupt into a full-blown crisis that reshapes the country's power dynamics. And that's all we have for you on the show today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost. Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
$4 trilhão.
Portuguese,
Por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.